All right, good morning. How are y'all doing today? Good? So today, we're going to be speaking about, of course, continue on in our gospel to Matthew, and chapter 19, where we hear about the riches of the kingdom and the first and last. Now behold, one came and said to him, "Good teacher, what good thing shall I do that I may have eternal life?" So he said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one is good but one, and that is God. But what if you want to enter into life? Keep the commandments." And he said to them, "Which ones?" Jesus said, "You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness. Honor your father and your mother, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself." The younger man then said to him, "All of these I have kept from my youth. What do I still lack?" Jesus said to him, "If you want to be perfect," keyword, perfect, "go sell what you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come follow me." But when the young man heard that saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Assuredly I say to you, that it is hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And again I say to you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven." When his disciples heard it, they were greatly astonished, saying, "Who then can be saved?" But Jesus looked at them and said to them, "With men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible." Then Peter answered and said to him, "See, we have left everything we ever had, followed you. Therefore, what shall we have?" So Jesus said to them, "Assuredly I say to you, that in the regeneration of the Son of Man sits on the throne of his glory, you who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or wife or children or lands for my sake shall receive 100-fold and inherit eternal life. But we who are first and the last first." So we hear two really big main points. That it's hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, as just as hard as it is for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. Now just think of that imagery. There is a huge, massive animal, the biggest animal that they've ever seen in their day. They haven't seen elephants or anything like that, but they have these camels, massive camels. And then you think of how tiny an eye of a needle is. I mean, even with the perfect eyes, you can barely even get a thread through there. So just think of the imagery, and that was a saying back then of how difficult things can be. But as we read, all difficult things can get through God. So we're going to be talking about some of these things today. But I'm going to start with a story. And this story is of a fisherman and a businessman. Once a fisherman was sitting near the seashore, under the shadow of a tree, smoking a cigarette. Suddenly, a rich businessman passing by approached him and inquired as to why he was sitting underneath a tree and not working. To this, poor fisherman replied that he had caught enough fish for the day, enough for him and his family to eat. Hearing this, the rich man got kind of confused. Why don't you catch more fishes instead of sitting underneath the shadow of this tree? So they had a little exchange. What would I do if I had more fishes? Like, what exactly would I do with these extra fishes? He said, "Well, you could catch more fishes, sell them, earn them, and buy a bigger boat." And the fisherman's like, "Well, what would I do then?" "Well, you could go into deeper waters, catch more fish, and make even more money." Well, the fisherman says, "What would I do then?" "Well, you could buy more boats, employ more people to work more for you, and make even more money." Well, the fisherman says, "What would I do then?" "Well, you could be a rich businessman like me." Then the fisherman goes, again, "What would I do then?" "Well, then," the businessman says, "you can live your life peacefully." The fisherman goes and stares at him confused and goes, "What do you think I'm doing right now?" So think about the role of the businessman and the role of the fisherman, on how this whole cycle would have to occur of stress, frustration, employing other people and having all of that craziness, so that, for what? To be in the place that he is now, sitting peacefully, smoking his cigarette, underneath the tree, in peace. So the moral of the story is for us to not focus on our lives more of complications and cloudiness, but on how we can spend our time thinking about life at this current moment, on what we're doing right here, right now, on this day. There's a famous quotation that says that my riches are not in the extent of my possessions, but in the fewness of my wants. So as you see, in the difference of the two, the businessman and the fisherman, you've got the businessman who's thinking mass quantities of fish, money, dollar bills, fish is for everybody, which is a good thing, may I add, but it's at the stake of dealing with all this stress for the fisherman. So you need to think about the two morals. So today we hear, again, that it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, I was actually speaking to some of my friends, and they're like, well, I come from money, or, not necessarily my money, but my parents have money. Does that automatically just take them away from the kingdom of heaven? Anyone who lives above the poverty line, are they not going to make it to heaven? Well, that's not necessarily what's being said here. So let's read. We hear that this guy, this richer man, comes to Jesus and says to him, I've done all the commandments. Jesus had listed them for him. I've done all of them. What else can I do? Thinking that he needs to have this resume to get into heaven. Thinking that he has to have these good deeds, these activities that he can put on a list, a long, long list, and it's be like, here, Jesus, here's my list. That's not necessarily how it works, but he had a pretty good resume. He had listed some of the hardest commandments to follow, and he had done those. He was a righteous man, but he needed something, that one thing. And Jesus said to him, well, I can offer you something. I can offer you perfection. Remember that word that when I stopped and I said, this is the key word, perfection. It's the one thing that we all strive to do, whether it's within our work, whether it's within anything that we do. Our children, our families, our life, we think of, how can I make this more perfect? Well, Jesus says there's only one way to do that. And that is if he walked away from the things that he's most attached to, that being his wealth. So we're not saying for all the rich people to sell all their belongings, but the idea is that we need to be more vigilant of what we are attached to on this earth, because that is more what it is. So it's not necessarily money, it could be anything. There are things that we're attached to that could be technology, it could be our work, it could be things that take us away from our main focus, which is that we are here today in almost like of a waiting room. We are here, and the things that we do within this room, this earth, are going to hopefully take us to eternal life, to the heavenly kingdom. And these are the things that we need to think about, because when we think about the things we're attached to, in this case, it was in the parable, it's wealth and wealthy objects, nice houses, stuff like that. But this could be taken in any context, not just this one. So it's not the rich man's, every person that lives above the poverty line is going to go to hell. It's we all have something that we're attached to significantly, so much that it clouds us from our actual purpose here today. With wealth brings usually more stress. And as we see in the story, we hear about the fisherman, the story I was saying, about the fisherman living his simple life, where the businessman is looking to further enhance this life that ends up taking him into the same place. But it's not just wealth that does this. It's not that things that we lose focus on. There's a really popular quote by C.S. Lewis that says, Christ says, "Give me all. I do not want so much of your time and so much of your money and so much of your work. I want you. He wants us. He came to us in Christmas time, just a couple days ago, so that he can save us. He wants us. He wants to become closer to us, and he wants us to know that so that we can then become closer to him. So it's okay if you have money. It's okay if you don't have money. It's okay if you have a nice car or a bad or worse car. You know, it's okay that all of these things exist, but it's how we focus them in our minds and how we take these things and we allow them to sometimes consume us. I mean, I see teenagers, people that are younger than mine, that are constantly, I mean, I'm a victim to it, on technology. They're attached to their cell phones. Where you see, I mean, I even saw with my own family sometimes, my younger cousins, they've got their phones out. We're having Christmas dinner and their phones are out. They're sitting here like this, typing. There's turkey, there's food, there's family. There's things that are so much more that we can actually healthily be attached to. So I'm not saying don't get so attached. There are things that we can actually be attached to that are healthy for us. One of those things, family, friends, people that are closest to us. If we attach ourselves to them, we are looking out for them. We're celebrating with them. We're laughing with them. Sometimes even our crazy family members, they frustrate what's out of us, but we love them still. These are things that are healthy to be attached to. Or being attached to things in moderation. It's okay if you have technology. I'm reading my Bible study off of technology. There's daily readings app. There's ways around what we have in this world that can help us get to the next step, that can help us on our journey. So when we think about these things, think about our lives, think about what we really dedicate ourselves to, what we really sacrifice ourselves to, and think about it. Have a little self-reflection. Have that reality check. And think about, is what I'm doing really benefiting me? This sacrifice, this dedication, this work hours, is it for myself? Or is this dedication and sacrifice get me to the heavenly kingdom? Will this assist me in my journey? So, to conclude, when we think about the things we're attached to, just remember something that we've done previously in the passage that we've read. I'm going to read again. In Matthew 6:21, we read, "Where your treasure is," this is Jesus speaking, "where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." So when you think about the things that we have in our lives, when it comes to family, when it comes to objects, when it comes to anything, think about those things. Think about what your treasure is. Give yourself that reality check, because it will make everything better when you start knowing within your heart where you're going. Father John said on Christmas, for us to, when we're celebrating the joy of Christmas, to really, obviously you hear the saying, keep Christ in Christmas. And that means even more. And that's keeping Christ within our hearts with a clear path so that we don't get cloudiness from all these other things. So just remember, where your treasure is, that is where your heart will be. God bless, and I hope you all have a great day.
Μετά υπερελές ζωής, ειρήνης, υγείας, σωτηρίας, επισκέψεων, σιγουρήσεως και αφέσεως των αμαρτιών των δούλων του Θεού, πάντων των ευσεβών και ορθοδόξων χριστιανών, που κατοικούν και παρεπιδημούν την πόλη και ενωρητή ταύτηνων των ενωρητών επιτρόπων συνδρομητών και περιτών της Αγίας Εκκλησίας ταύτης, έτοιμοι μεθά υπέρ των μακαρίων και αμνημίσουν τη τόρων της Αγίας Εκκλησίας ταύτης και υπέρ πάντων των χρονοπαστωμένων πατέρων και το φώνημα των εθάδων σεβώς και παντοχώρου ορθοδόξων. Ότι ελέημον και θελάνθρωπος Θεός υπάρχεις και εσύ την αναπέμπω με το Πατρί και το